Valencia is an amazing city that is getting more and more popular with tourists. But to be honest, my main reason for coming to Valencia was not the city of arts and science. No, it was for the fact that there are two zoological facilities, both very noteworthy in their own rights. So of course we will also cover Bioparc Valencia, and when you're from the future you will find a link right here. But first, in this video we are going to take a look at the Oceanografic, which is the largest aquarium complex in Europe with an area of 110,000 square meters and an overall holding capacity of 42 million liters. So yeah, naturally there is a lot to discover, and even beyond this sometimes controversially discussed keeping of belugas and the dolphin show, there are many special animal encounters and experiences that you will hardly be able to have anywhere else in Europe or even the entire world. So take a deep breath, because today we're diving into one of the best marine zoos there is. Let me say it straight up, this is my favorite aquarium or marine zoo I've ever been to, but please let me know in the comments what your favorite marine zoos and aquariums are, so that I know what other facilities I definitely still have to visit. And if you don't want to miss my videos about them, well, you have to subscribe to the channel, I guess. Thank you so much, and let's get going. Located in the eastern part of Valencia, the Oceanographic itself is part of the iconic City of Arts and Sciences. So it was also designed by architect Santiago Calatrava, which might be obvious from the entrance area alone. When you enter here, the staff will give you a tip where to start your journey. They recommended that we start with the sharks, and I assume that all of this is done so that the visitor numbers are spread out a bit right from the start, which is quite clever. In this video, however, we stick to the numbered tour. Therefore, we start off with the entrance building, where in the cellar a rearing tank for young sharks and rays awaits us. There are also some jellyfish to be seen here, such as Pacific sea nettle and fried egg jellyfish. And there are also some shops here where you can buy souvenirs at the end. But we are only getting started, and the first proper stop is fittingly the Mediterranean Sea. In the first room, a circular aquarium awaits us in the center, showing the habitat of a Posidonian meadow. Posidonia are a type of seaweed in which individual plants grow to hundreds of square kilometers in size and live for thousands of years. Posidonian meadows are therefore an important ecosystem for many Mediterranean species. There are also some smaller aquariums here with other species of jellyfish, but you will soon realize that there are hardly any small aquariums in the Oceanografic. Instead of tiring rows of endless small aquariums, there are almost only large aquariums that represent a single habitat and harbor many different species together. The port basin, for example, is home to true branded sea breams, Mediterranean barracudas, the strange-looking John Dories, turbots, and many more. The subtidal zone also offers just as many species to discover, as does the Mediterranean coral reef, which truly looks like an underwater garden. Even the common octopus does not live here in a separate tank that is far too small, as is so often the case, but together with many other species in a tank that represents a rocky coastal environment. The last aquarium in the Mediterranean tower takes us even deeper down to a coralligenous seabed. Those also have a high level of biodiversity, which is represented in the aquarium by numerous species. I found the flying gurnards particularly exciting, and it was a shame that the lightning made filming difficult, because the angular rough shark is not kept anywhere else in the world. All in all, the Mediterranean Tower is a great start to our tour, but it's actually one of the least spectacular areas in the park. So let's continue. The way back up is via stairs or lift. We emerge back into the fresh air, where a huge spherical aviary immediately catches our eye. This aviary, which is normally accessible, is 26 meters high and serves as a habitat for mangrove and swamp dwellers. Fortunately, you can also observe numerous birds from outside. Most of the species, such as scarlet ibises or spoonbills, are often seen in zoos, but the West Mediterranean purple swanfin is less common. Unfortunately, as the aviary was not accessible when we visited, the fish in the aquariums could only be spotted from a great distance. But that's okay when you have a view like this all around you. As already mentioned, the Oceanografic covers an area of 110,000 square meters, and as all the aquarium areas are underground, there is plenty of space for large ponds through which you can wander from one station to the next, discovering numerous water birds along the way. Pelicans and flamingos also live here, for example, and you can watch them here in a truly stunningly beautiful setting with a mixture of ponds, artificial rocks, dense planting and the iconic architecture of Felix Candela, who unfortunately did not live to see the opening of the Oceanographic in 2003, but here too his work now outlives him and will continue to inspire countless more people, so thank you Felix, you've done well. Behind the spherical aviary there is an enclosure for Mediterranean tortoises, though there were also demoiselle cranes here, a species that is extinct in Spain. But even though I welcome the keeping of these animals to raise awareness, in this enclosure they looked out of place. Next up are the seals, where we have obviously arrived at just the right time. Common seals and Californian sea lions live here. Their enclosure is not the largest, and I miss a bit of natural soil, but the pool still holds 963 cubic meters of water and is up to 6.55 meters deep. As you can see, there is also an underwater view below ground, where you can not only watch the seals diving, no, here we also discover that there is actually a third roommate, a loggerhead sea turtle. This specimen also probably comes from the so-called Arca del Mar, a recovery center run by the Oceanographic Foundation, which rescues an average of 70 sea turtles off the coast of Valencia every year. If you want to learn more about that, you can also visit the Arca del Mar with a guided tour. Even without a tour, you can get an insight into the rearing process here. In other words, there are cute baby turtles and tortoises to see. There are also some waders to see, and they live in an enclosure where in the water at the same time turtles are rehabilitated, if I understood correctly. And now we are going back down again, but this time we dive into the temperate and the tropical sea. This is also where the underwater view of the seals is located, and next to it, in an artificial grotto in the Mysteries of the Sea exhibition, there are a couple more of the rare smaller aquaries. Here you can see some unusual species such as the scorpionfish or the frogfish, which can only be seen in 5 institutions in Europe. The same applies to the well, actually not so common sea dragons, which are also just a fascinating sight. The roundel we are in now also houses a few more jellyfish, an exhibition on spider crabs, which used to be kept here, and the next larger aquarium, which has a capacity of 265 cubic meters and shows the habitat of a kelp forest. Here you can see leopard sharks, for example, but also swell sharks, which, unlike in North America, are rarely seen in Europe. There are only 2 other facilities that keep them. The tour continues through a 70-meter-long underwater tunnel, one of the longest in Europe. It simulates an underwater journey from the temperate Atlantic waters of Europe through the open sea to American tropical waters. The tunnel is therefore divided into 3 sections, in each of which there are numerous species of fish to marvel at, and of course it's a different experience when the fish literally swim over your head. And in the last section you can also encounter another sea turtle this way. And with that, we have reached the tropics, which start off quite unspectacularly. There is a small circular aquarium with common clownfish for all Nemo fans. There is also a separate area with mud skippers, which are definitely another fascinating species. But the next room is the real eye-catcher here, with 2 large aquariums on the left and right. There is also an installation on the ceiling that looks like a boat from below, as if we were underwater ourselves, and marveling at the colorful life in the coral reefs through the 24-meter-long panoramic windows is simply brilliant. The tank on the left shows a Caribbean coral reef. The one on the right is an Indo-Pacific one. Both tanks hold 443 cubic meters and show an enormous variety of coral and fish species. And once again another sea turtle, which still won't be the last for today. I'm not going to list all the species here, such as the orbicular batfish, because that would simply take too long. Many people will probably not even pay attention to individual fish here, but rather marvel at the overall picture. Either way, I could spend hours here alone, but we have to move on. And so we surface once again where the South American sea lions are already waiting for us. As with the other seals, their enclosure is not exactly large. The pool, which this time has no underwater view, is only up to 3 meters deep, but still holds 1078 cubic meters. Unfortunately, this enclosure is no more than average at best. From the continental islands, we continue to the oceanic islands, where you might encounter a Komodo dragon, albeit not a real one. The Aldabra giant tortoises, however, are more than just a statue. Their enclosures are beautifully integrated into the greenery, which is providing a fitting backdrop. In addition, there is also an aviary here, where crowned pigeons live, for example. We skipped the 4D cinema, but if you want to see a movie here, it costs a little extra, or you can get a combined ticket from the start. And the same hall also serves as an auditorium with an aquarium representing the Red Sea. For us, on the other hand, we walked past the flamingos towards one of the absolute highlights here, because now it's off to the Arctic. Under a large dome lies the room we are stepping into. The bluish lighting creates a fittingly cold atmosphere. And here they await us, the belugas, probably the most extraordinary encounter at Oceanogràfic. At first we see them swimming below us from a gallery, but on the lower level we can also meet them underwater. I last saw belugas more than 20 years ago as a child in Duisburg, but those days are long gone. This is now pretty much the only facility where you can see them in Europe at the moment. The Sea Life Trust also runs a sanctuary in Iceland, and there is one facility in Belarus, although they are not part of their more recent promotional videos, so I'm not convinced they are really still there. But there definitely are a lot of belugas in Russia. And while we are on the subject of Russia, until recently there were also belugas in Ukraine, but they were evacuated due to the war and transferred right here to Oceanogràfic. Now, of course, I'm aware that there are a lot of people who take issue with whales in captivity, but this video is not a suitable place for a discussion of principles, and I don't want to talk anyone out of their beliefs or opinions, so as with the dolphins later on, I will simply stick to the facts. 4 belugas currently live here, the 2 rescued animals from Ukraine, as well as Yulka and Kailu, the first beluga born in human care in Europe, which happened back in 2016. The father, Cairo, died in 2022. He was estimated to be at least 60 years old, which is very old for a beluga. Cairo and Yulka came here from an aquarium in Argentina, which had to give the animals away for economic reasons. They were probably caught in Russia, where they still don't care what activists in other parts of the world think. Here in the Oceanographic, the whales can move freely between the viewable pools and the pools behind the scenes, which together have a volume of 3,582 cubic meters and are up to 5 meters deep. The water is, of course, extensively filtered and cooled to the belugas' comfort temperature. The physical well-being of the animals is regularly monitored, and I have also been able to observe a little of the medical training here. Research is also carried out here, which potentially also benefits animals in the wild. And of course, the whales also impress a lot of people here, which hopefully can also inspire at least a few of them to stand up for these animals. Is that a good reason to keep them here? Are the animals doing well? Unlike many keyboard warriors, I'm not confident in making a definitive judgment here. However, I have linked you a detailed article in the description that I came across during my research. It also makes a comparison with the aforementioned sanctuary. A portion of it is an interview, so I think it's a really good read if you are interested in this topic. Incidentally, in addition to the belugas, walruses also used to live here. This is their old enclosure, which is now home to some waterfowl, and as much as I would have liked to have seen the walruses here, given the size of the enclosure and the fact that they were only kept indoors, I am glad that they were given up in 2019. They now live in Paradisa, but are still under the ownership of Oceanogràfic. But I have to say, the waterfowl look a bit out of place here as new inhabitants. You can only see them from a distance from above, or with a bit of luck when diving underwater. You can just tell that this enclosure wasn't designed for them. In addition to some educational elements, including even an explorer station, there is also a virtual reality experience which we skipped. Instead, we went straight to the other side of the globe, to the Antarctic. Here you can look through a large white pane of glass into the penguin enclosure where king penguins and gento penguins live. I have to say, after seeing Planet Penguin at Loro Park, an enclosure like this doesn't really knock my socks off, and even Wuppertal offers a much more exciting visitor experience in comparison. That's not to say it's bad here, but if there's one other area apart from the seals where I would like to see an improvement, it would be this one. This time our trip to the surface is only brief. We stop by the slender-snouted crocodiles, then it's time to dive down again into the depth of the ocean. And so we finally reached the station where we actually started our visit. So it's time to see some sharks. Although there are also a whole host of other fish to be found here, the number of different rays alone is impressive. Once again, I won't list all the different species here, but rather let you have a little fun discovering them for yourselves. So let's leave it at a few selected highlights. The sand tiger sharks are certainly the first to catch your eye. With over 100 kilos and a body length of around 2 meters, they are a mighty sight. Incidentally, females can actually grow to over 3 meters in length. There are also some more or less smaller shark species to be seen, such as the sandbark shark or nurse sharks, which actually might not be as heavy as sand tiger sharks, but can grow even larger. Apart from the sharks, the last sea turtle awaits us here now. However, my absolute highlight was the long-comb sawfish, which I had never seen before. No wonder, as there are currently only 2 other facilities in Europe that have them. Until a while ago, you could also have seen ocean sunfish here, but these extremely sensitive and difficult to keep animals are no longer part of the collection, at least not at the moment. However, the collection remains impressive and exciting, all the better that the tank and presentation are also excellent. At 6,000 cubic meters, it's not only one of the largest aquariums in the Oceanografic, but probably in the whole world. You can watch all the different fish from two roundels, which are connected by a 35-meter long underwater tunnel. And as you can imagine and have already seen, the experience here is truly breathtaking. However, on good days it can of course be a bit crowded here, but most people get their fill in the first roundel and in the first half of the tunnel and then leave relatively quickly, so it's definitely worth a try to see if you can enjoy the view at the back a little more in peace. In addition, you can of course always wait for one of the dolphin shows when the rest of the park is a little less busy. Although the stands at the Dolphinarium can accommodate over 1,500 people, they can fill up very quickly before one of the shows. We therefore arrived at the Dolphins more than half an hour before the show started. That was a bit excessive, but even beforehand we could already observe the dolphins and their trainers. And so I was also able to get a good overview of the pools here. And whilst the depth of the pools was difficult to estimate, even at first glance it all seemed bigger than any other dolphinarium I had ever been to. But the actual facts are even more impressive than I thought. The pools are up to 10.5 meters deep, so that the separable tanks hold a total of 24,000 cubic meters of water. For comparison, the Dolphin Lagoon in Nuremberg, which we last talked about, only holds 5,400 cubic meters. So we really have a completely different scale here, but keep in mind that Valencia is also just designed for a greater number of animals. According to Setabase, there are currently 20 dolphins living here, 8 of which were born in Valencia. In the show there were also two separate groups that were switched in the middle, and while it was the turn of one group to wow the audience, the others were given toys to keep them occupied. And yes, the show was absolutely spectacular for the audience, but since I don't speak Spanish, I can only judge the educational aspect of the show to a limited extent. Even before the show there were videos to sensitize people to the protection of the ocean, for example. The same I know from many other dolphinariums. What I had never seen before, however, was a quiz before the show in which everyone could take part via mobile phone, and the winner could then take on a small role in the show. The questions weren't exactly difficult, but it was still a damn cool way to teach people about dolphins in a fun way. But I'm afraid the fun is over for us at this point, because I've now shown you pretty much everything the Oceanografic has to offer, and so it's time for a hard-hitting conclusion. Well, okay, I already told you the Oceanografic is the best marine zoo or aquarium I've been to so far. On the one hand, of course, this is due to the fact that the selection of animals alone offers numerous highlights, and I also found the design and backdrop very exciting from an architectural point of view. Above all, however, I was impressed by the way the animals are kept and presented here. Well, at least for the most part. I do wish they would have given the seals a little bit more space, for example. But while you can of course always make a big deal about whales and dolphins, I found the almost exclusively large aquariums for fish particularly refreshing. Not only because there is more space for the animals, but also because I didn't get tired of going from one small to medium-sized aquarium to the next, which is precisely the reason why most aquariums just bore me after a while, to be honest. But here the opposite is the case. I thought we would be here for a maximum of 3 to 4 hours and leave after the second dolphin show at 2 p.m. at the latest, but we were actually still here during the last show at 5 p.m. We stayed at the park for 7 hours and I enjoyed every single one of them. And even though there were a lot of people there, it was still very relaxing to just sit down in front of one of the big aquariums and just watch for 20 minutes or so. So yes, the visit here was was an amazing experience. And not just for me, but also for my girlfriend. And that's one of the advantages of being in a new relationship. I can also tell you what it was like for someone who hasn't been visiting around 50 zoos a year for several years now. You know, someone normal. So I feel all the more confident in telling you, whether you are an absolute zoo fan or not, I can highly recommend a visit here when traveling to Valencia. And I'm already looking forward to returning here in a few years' time so that I can perhaps take a look behind the scenes and talk more about things like the educational program, the research being done here, or the contributions to species conservation. Because at least what I've been able to see on the surface seems just as well founded. So please hit the subscribe button if you want to see more zoo videos from me, maybe especially the one about Bioparc Valencia. Always keep in mind, the bigger this channel gets, the more I'll be able to look behind the scenes at zoos around the world, and I'll be able to share even more in-depth impressions with you. So I'm also very appreciative of every thumbs up, and feel free to write me your opinion about Oceanogràfic in the comments. And with that being said, thanks for your attention. Gracias y esperamos verle pronto, or as we say in Germany, bis bald meine Lieben. Yes, we always throw kisses. Bye, yours truly, Martin.